Alright, vaqueros, so we recently got the Season 4 update a few days ago, and with that we got some massive changes to the shotgun class that I need to talk about. Of course, last video I talked about the Expedite 12 and how that's a great shotgun now, but now we gotta talk about them as a whole, all the shotgun changes in one video. So I'm not gonna go super in depth with the patch notes. I'm gonna go over shotgun by shotgun, what changed, the new damage mechanics that have been implemented, and all that kind of stuff, and try to keep the numbers to a minimum since I don't want to bore you guys too much. But with that being said, let's just go ahead and get into the video. So the first important thing I want to talk about is the new shotgun damage mechanic, which we can just call the shotgun damage priority mechanic, which basically in the patch notes is this: if more than 4 pellets hit a target, the highest damage among those hit pellets will be used. So what that essentially means is that if you hit more than 4 pellets, the game will check to see which one of those hit pellets does the most damage. So it'll see, okay, this one hit the head, so it's going to be dealing the most damage, so apply that damage to all the other 3 pellets. So essentially, the highest damage among those hit pellets will apply to all 4 pellets, which means if you hit 1 pellet on the head and 3 on chest or legs or arms, whatever, it's going to be dealing headshot damage for all 4 pellets. Or if you hit 2 leg, 1 arm, and 1 chest, it'll look and say, okay, which one did the most damage? The chest, so we're going to apply that chest damage to all 4 pellets, assuming that you hit more than 4 pellets in total. So this is a really great change to see, and I love when they make these sort of changes to the damage mechanics or some sort of general sweeping changes to a gun. This is really cool to see, and this is going to help a lot with your consistency, because now you're going to be dealing mainly chest damage, assuming you hit your shots well, which is nice to see, and it's going to make hitting headshots just a little bit easier, because as long as you hit more than 4 pellets and one of them hits the head, you're going to deal headshot damage. So that's really awesome to see. I love this change, so kudos to you devs for making this happen. This is such an awesome change to see, and I'm very happy with it. So before I get into specifics with each gun, I do want to preface this. Shotguns, basically Season 3 were in a good spot. They were okay, they needed some love, but they were okay, they were usable, and you could kind of make them work. Season 3 Reloaded happened, they got these enormous 2-shot ranges for a lot of the guns, and they were fantastic and the best they've ever been, and I was so happy with those changes. Then Season 4 came, we have now regressed back to Season 3, but a tiny bit better. So essentially, all the shotguns have lost their crazy 2-shot potential. This is really sad to have to say, because that was such a great change to see when Season 3 Reloaded came out, but now that is gone. So instead of killing in 2 shots with the pump actions in the second drop-off range, now it's going to be only in the first drop-off range, which is basically half of that. So essentially your 2-shot range we had in Season 3 Reloaded is now been cut in half to where it used to be before. So now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and get into specifics with each, starting with the Brysons. So the Brysons had all their body multipliers increased. That will probably come as no surprise, because we did get 300 health in the last update, or they added 50 health, so now we have 300 health in total, which means the shotguns had to come up a little bit just to still be kind of competitive and decently usable. So of course they deal more damage than they did in Season 3 Reloaded, but the 2-shot range now with the base buckshot is out to the first drop-off range, like I said, and unfortunately that's not very far. If you want to kit it out for attachments, the Bryson 800, you're looking at about like 8.3 or 8.5 meters around there, and for the Bryson 890 it's more close to like that 7-meter range, so it's really not that good. But one of the changes that essentially came with this update is that now Dragon's Breath is basically back on the menu, boys. So when you want to use a shotgun and get super close to people, Dragon's Breath is probably the way to go, because you deal more damage overall. I'm talking 230 health as opposed to just 200 with the base ammo, which is pretty crazy, and you're getting more of a 2-shot range, but essentially you're losing consistency out of that range, because what happens with Dragon's Breath now with this 300 health pool is that your 2-shot range is great, and then after that it immediately drops to a 4-shot kill. So if you're trying to push range with these things, well, I just don't recommend it. It's not very good with Dragon's Breath. But when you don't use Dragon's Breath and use the base ammo, you're going to be getting a 2-shot kill, and then a 3-shot, and then a 4-shot. So they're a little bit more versatile. So if you're looking for just straight up getting in kissing distance and using a shotgun, Dragon's Breath is probably the way to go. But if you want more versatility and push the range a little bit, which some people do like to do, then probably use buckshot, as that's going to be more consistent and have more damage output at ranges overall. Now onto the Lockwood, and unfortunately this is the one that probably got hit the hardest with this update, because it's just not nearly as good as it was. But with this, they did increase the multipliers. They also increased the mid damage range. So essentially that it used to be 5.8 for that 2-shot with the base gun. That's out to about 7.4 now, which, if I recall, that's kind of where it was at launch. I think it used to be that, and then they nerfed it in multiplayer, and that kind of applied to Warzone as well. So it's nice to see they brought that back up. But unfortunately, why it's so hard to use still is because in that first drop-off range, you don't deal enough damage to 2-shot unless you hit headshots, which means that, yes, at 2 meters with the base gun, you got to hit a headshot mixed in there, which is easier to do than it was, but the fact that you have to do a headshot at 2 meters is kind of ridiculous in my opinion. And it seems like they're really walking on eggshells with this shotgun. Like, they're really afraid of making it too strong, it seems like, and just not giving it a solid 2-shot. And I don't really know why. I know we're kind of scarred from the double barrel from Vanguard, but that was a Kimbo, completely different story. I think they can kind of give this shotgun a little bit more love. It just keeps getting thrown in the backseat, and really, that's not the way to go. I really think this gun needs a little bit more love, unfortunately. But Dragon's Breath, definitely the way to go on this one. If you want to use this shotgun, do not use it without Dragon's Breath. You're going to get a great 2-shot, really ridiculously fast time to kill with Dragon's Breath. So I highly recommend you use that, and I have a video on that Dragon's Breath build, which I'll probably cover again soon. So use that if you want to use the Lockwood. Also, they did change the transition speed from hipfire to aim down sight, so that's a little bit faster, but it's not something you'll notice, so not a huge buff there. But it is nice to see they are kind of trying to help it out in some ways. Now for the KV Broadside, it got a nerf and a buff. So essentially the nerf was that its mid damage range was decreased, which you probably won't notice too much. It's not that big of a decrease from what I can tell. And then also Dragon's Breath did get a little bit of a buff on the flip side, which is kind of funny to see because I know a lot of people hate Dragon's Breath and everyone saw that and lost their mind, but they don't really realize we got 50 health, so they wanted to kind of increase it to at least make it a little bit more manageable up close. So no, Dragon's Breath with this gun is still not going to 2-shot. It's still a 3-shot kill. Honestly, for this gun, you can kind of get away with Dragon's Breath or no Dragon's Breath. There's not like a clear-cut advantage, it seems like, to either one. Of course, if you don't use Dragon's Breath, you're going to deal more damage at ranges, which is nice, but Dragon's Breath overall, up close, is much scarier to play against, and it's kind of ridiculous to see flames everywhere, and your 4-shot kill range is actually a little bit better with Dragon's Breath. And then after that 4-shot with both guns, it's going to take about 6 shots at least to kill. So honestly, just use Dragon's Breath. It's not really going to matter a whole lot. I would say just stick with Dragon's Breath, as people probably get scared by that the most, and it probably affects them psychologically more than anything. But of course, you can still use the base gun. These spammy guns are just, you can kind of use them however, in all honesty. And this is honestly still probably the best shotgun out of this update because it's just the easiest to use. It's ridiculously simple and easy. You just spam and hit fire away, and it has decent damage. So this is probably the best shotgun after the update. Unfortunately, it's just how the nature of the game is played. It's the easiest. It's the spammy shotgun. This is the go-to for a lot of people. I don't know why people are freaking out about a Dragon's Breath buff. I don't think they really understand that it needed it slightly, so whatever. That's the KV Broadside. It's about as good as it ever was. I guess it got a little bit more consistent with that damage mechanic. So that's all I'll talk about with this gun. But now on to the Expedite, which I've already talked about before in detail in my other video. This one has a 3-shot kill range that's ridiculous. As long as you can get pellets hit and they don't disappear, you'll get a 3-shot kill with this if you're hitting your shots. It's ridiculous. It's a lot of fun. It definitely got the biggest glow up and buff out of these shotgun changes. So I'm glad to see that because this gun definitely needed it. It was definitely the weirdest gun of the group, and it's nice to see it finally get some good, decent love. And the last thing I'll mention before I end the video is Slugs. Slugs didn't get any changes. They seem about the same, which is kind of a nerf in all honesty, because now since you have 300 health, your 2-shot ranges and your 2-shots and all that are kind of all out of whack now. I don't think they did a balancing pass on Slugs yet, which is understandable, but they probably will have to at some point because now they're just kind of worse than they were, which means they kind of went from niche funny to niche a lot harder to use and still funny, so you can still snipe with them. They're still going to deal a lot of headshot damage, but they're not nearly as good as they were, which is sad to see. So of course, if you're going to use Slugs, just know that they're probably going to be harder to use and you're going to have to hit more consistent headshots more than you used to. So that's sad to see. One last thing I want to mention before my overall thoughts is that with this update, shotguns got an also sort of another indirect buff, and that's because the time to kill changes really mainly affected the SMGs, ARs, all these other full auto guns, but the shotguns like the pump actions, like the Brysons and the Lockwood, they still have 2-shot capability, which means their time to kills, even though they're slow, the gap between these and SMGs, that time to kill gap, is now smaller than it ever has been. So even though we lost our 2-shot potential at crazy ranges, we make up for it by having a little bit more consistency up close, and also the time to kill difference between shotguns and the SMGs and ARs is now closer than it ever has been. So yes, this is another good time to be a shotgun user if you like using them, because now they're just a little bit stronger in that way too. I just wanted to point that out before I wrap up with my overall thoughts. Now on to my overall thoughts. I am pleasantly surprised by this update because of the general sweeping changes we got with the damage mechanics and how they kind of buffed up all the other shotguns just to kind of make them in line with the 300 health. Of course, I'm extremely sad we lost that 2-shot potential, and while I do think they're not as good as they were in Season 3 Reloaded, they're still much better than they were in Season 3, so we're at a pretty good spot right now, I think, and we'll see where time goes. Maybe the devs will increase the headshot multiplier at further ranges so you can 2-shot again further out with the Brysons like you used to be able to in Season 3 Reloaded. We'll just see, but overall, it's a pretty good update. I think it's a win. The damage mechanic change is really going to help you with consistency up close. So that, in my opinion, is really, really awesome, and I'm so happy for that change. So that's pretty much going to cover it for all the changes I wanted to talk to you guys about. So let me know down below in the comments, what do you think about this update? Was this a great update? Is it a massive W? Is it a massive L? Do you think that there could be some more changes implemented for shotguns in the future? And with all that being said, guys, I will see you in the next video.